Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. The White House announces significant changes for 500,000 illegal immigrants. How hundreds of thousands could now be on their way to eventually becoming U.S. citizens if they're eligible. New York's highest court upholds a gag order on Trump. His attorneys argue it violates his right to speak to voters. The severe heat wave continues its hold across the country. How the National Guard is at the ready to help in New York. Police have a suspect in custody after a teenage girl was raped in Flushing. The community rallied in response to the crime. We'll tell you what they're demanding. NATO leaders are warning China to stop fueling Russia's war machine. Otherwise, they say it will face consequences. New whistleblower allegations against Boeing. This just hours before the U.S. Senate grills Boeing's CEO over the company's safety standards. We'll have the details. Severe heat advisories are in place across the U.S. as the intense heat wave continues its grip. The National Weather Service says temperatures will reach dangerous levels in many places, including the major metropolitan areas of Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and New York City. Many cities have opened cooling centers to help people beat the heat and have canceled outdoor activities. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul has ordered the state's National Guard and other agencies to be at the ready to assist those who may be struggling with these extreme temperatures.
Yesterday, I activated the National Guard, ready to assist and be deployed wherever they are needed. And as I said, we reached out to the emergency management personnel in all 62 counties, reminding them to have direct communication with their constituents as well.
In addition to the governor calling up the Guard, she's opening all of the state's beaches and pools a little early to allow people to battle the heat. More than 270 million people across the U.S. will experience temperatures at or above 90 degrees through the weekend. In order to avoid heat-related illness, experts recommend that you limit your exposure to the sun, wear cool, comfortable clothes, and most importantly, stay hydrated. Residents of a village in southern New Mexico were ordered to evacuate immediately as a fast-moving wildfire threatened homes. Officials in Ruidoso urged residents yesterday to leave without gathering belongings. The town is home to 7,000 people. Power was shut off to some 2,000 homes and businesses as the fire grew to at least 2 square miles. Hot ash was reported falling in nearby communities, with authorities urging people to call 911 if they spot flames. State police reported phone outages that could impact emergency responses. As of this morning, the blaze, covering over 8 square miles, was 0% contained. It threatened multiple structures. A portion of U.S. Highway 70 was closed as the fire spread. The South Fork fire, which started on the Mescalero Apache Reservation, prompted a state of emergency. A second fire, called the Salt Fire, has burned over 4 square miles with no containment. And New York's highest court has declined to hear Trump's appeal on the gag order in his falsifying business records case. The gag order, issued by Judge Juan Merchan, remains in effect even after Trump's felony conviction last month. It bans Trump from making public statements about witnesses, jurors, prosecutors, court staff, or members of their family. Merchan fined Trump $10,000 and found him in criminal contempt for violating the gag order 10 times. His attorneys argue the gag order violates the right of every American voter to hear from the leading candidate for president on matters of public interest. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg had some strong words to the Chinese Communist Party for fueling Russia's war with Ukraine. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the State Department.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says that the Chinese regime will face consequences if it continues fueling Russia's war with Ukraine. He met with Secretary of State Antony Blinken here in Washington just ahead of the NATO summit, saying that China is a critical component in fueling Russia's war machine.
China cannot have it both ways. They cannot continue to have normal trade relationships with countries in Europe and at the same time fuel the biggest war we have seen in Europe since the Second World War. So at some stage this has to have consequences for China. Unless China changes its behavior, what kind of consequences should then this have for instance, our trade relations? Too early to say, but it has to be an issue that we need to address, because to continue as we do today is not viable.
Some 70% of the machine tools that Russia is importing are coming from China. 90% of the microelectronics coming from China, and that has enabled Russia to keep that defense industrial base going, to keep the war machine going, to keep the war going.
The heads of the NATO member countries will meet here in Washington on July 9th for the three-day summit. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And now to the Middle East. The Israeli military said that Hezbollah launched 4 projectiles toward Israel earlier today. This broke 3 days of relative calm. Israel said it intercepted all of the projectiles, but shrapnel from an explosive drone started a brush fire near the border. And Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said today that Secretary of State Antony Blinken assured him the U.S. is working to cancel restrictions on arms deliveries to Israel.
When Secretary Blinken was recently here in Israel, we had a candid conversation. I said I deeply appreciated the support the U.S. has given Israel from the beginning of the war. But I also said something else. I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies. Secretary Blinken assured me that the administration is working day and night to remove these bottlenecks. I certainly hope that's the case. It should be the case.
Last month, President Biden warned Israel that the U.S. would stop supplying it weapons if Israeli forces make a major invasion of Rafah. And next, the origins of COVID-19 virus in the spotlight again. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has the details. Luis, are you there?
The Senate's Committee on Homeland Security heard testimony from 4 experts as part of its investigation into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. During his opening remarks, Democratic Senator Gary Peters, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate, highlighted the challenges that Americans faced during the health emergency.
As Americans navigated the COVID-19 pandemic, they endured changing healthcare guidance, uncertainty and misinformation about how to best protect themselves and their families from this deadly virus.
Republican senators like Senator Ron Johnson focused their line on questioning on the sub-grants from the NIH and NIAID that ended up funding research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China that some Republicans believe constitutes gain-of-function research.
Really trying to get at is the purpose of this hearing, is asking the question, should we be funding, should we be engaged, should we be regulating to a much greater extent gain-of-function research?
Biodefense expert Gregory Koblenz supported the natural transmission COVID-19 origin theory, but also highlighted that the lack of transparency from the Chinese regime makes any determination near impossible.
I believe the available evidence points most strongly to a natural zoonotic spillover event as the origin of the pandemic. However, a research-related accident can't be ruled out at this time. A key obstacle to more definitive conclusion is the lack of transparency exercised by the Chinese government, which affects assessments of both potential pathways to the pandemic.
2 other experts who testified argue in favor of the lab leak COVID-19 origin theory. The split views demonstrate the controversial aspect of the investigation. I spoke with Republican Senator Roger Marshall, and he argued that the investigation should be taken off the spotlight.
Really what the next step is a 9/11 style commission. There's too many bright lights here. There's too many cameras. It's too political. We need to get this outside of Washington, D.C. and investigate this. And then how do we prevent the next pandemic from happening?
I also spoke with Republican Senator Rick Scott, and he agreed that the U.S. government should better define and better regulate gain-of-function research. Back to you.
And on Capitol Hill today, senators are grilling the CEO of Boeing. The head of the plane maker must answer to what lawmakers refer to as Boeing's broken safety culture.
Much has been said about Boeing's culture. We've heard those concerns loud and clear. Our culture is far from perfect. But we are taking action and we are making progress. We understand the gravity, and we're committed to moving forward with transparency and accountability.
Criticism of the plane maker's safety and quality control continues to grow after a door plug blew off a Boeing plane mid-flight in January. New whistleblower allegations surfaced just hours before the hearing. A Boeing quality assurance investigator claims the company lost track of damaged or sub-quality parts. He says these unaccounted for parts have likely already been installed on airplanes. And we'll have more about this on NTD Evening News with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. Now, this just in, police have arrested a man in connection with a shocking crime in Flushing, New York. The community rallied yesterday demanding more police and more protection for their children. NTD's Fiona G. was there.
I am outraged that this horrific crime has made parents fearful of letting kids play. Enough is enough. We need to take back our city and save New York so kids can play at parks and playgrounds without fear of being stabbed, shot, or raped.
The rally comes in response to a crime that happened here last Thursday when a 13-year-old girl who goes to the middle school right behind me was threatened and then raped in broad daylight. The incident has caused an outcry.
You never heard about problems here before. It was almost non-existent. But that is the state of the city that we're dealing with. So we don't just complain, we put forward a plan. There's not enough police, and we need that money to be spent to hire police. Don't be fearful and then flee. Stay and fight for what you know is right.
Members of the local community shared their shock when they heard the news.
I was devastated, upset, angry, frustrated. I'm saying, why? The park was the safest place for young children after school to come play soccer.
I have a 21-year-old, and every time that child walks, she's still my child, whether she's 21 or not. Every time she walks out the door, I worry. So much more than I used to, because it's not my community anymore. I don't know who's lurking around, and I don't know why, and I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know what I'm dealing with.
I just pray to God that we get the cops back, law and order is restored, and we become safe again.
Both residents and officials alike are calling for change to make the community safe again. Fiona G., NTD News.
It's been 2 years since the arson attack on the Compass Care Pregnancy Services Center near Buffalo, New York. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with Compass Care CEO Jim Hardin about the case, for which no suspects have been arrested.
Reverend Jim Hardin is the CEO of Compass Care.
When a woman comes in, we assess her situation and give her a kind of a customized solutions assessment, which means that we identify all the pressures that are driving her to get an abortion, and then connect her with the resources needed to address those particular pressures.
The Reverend says the center also assists moms-to-be with transportation, childcare, healthcare, and baby care essentials like diapers.
The world tells women that there's only two paths. Either you can have this baby and suffer a life of deprivation, or you can have an abortion and all your wildest dreams will come true. But there is a third narrative that womankind has been living for thousands of years, and it is the true story that you can have the baby and continue your career. You can have your baby and continue your education. You can have the baby and get health care. You can have the baby and your relationship can continue.
Hardin says community is key in helping women choose life.
Women have abortions because they feel alone. They feel like they can't do this by themselves. And so it's our job as a community to come together and walk together in all the challenges of life. Life is never going to be easy for anybody. But if we're looking to make an easy life for ourselves, it will ultimately fail. But we can have a fulfilling life and make the right decisions throughout. And we can do that together.
The Compass Care Pregnancy Center in the town of Amherst, New York, was attacked in June 2022. The FBI shared a video of the attack on its website. A masked individual appears to survey the area before moving to the open trunk of what the FBI believes is a red or orange Dodge Dart sedan. Another individual can soon be seen smashing windows as flames burn nearby and throwing a Molotov cocktail into the building. The FBI is offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to arrests. One of the individuals spray-painted the words, "Jane was here," on the building during the attack. Jane, a possible reference to a group called Jane's Revenge. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody described the group as criminal activists who have vandalized crisis pregnancy centers. Hardin feels the federal government is not enforcing the law equally around issues related to attacks on people who are pro-life. Hardin brings up D.C. abortion clinic protesters Lauren Handy and Jonathan Darnell, who both got nearly 5 years in prison for protesting inside the Surgery Clinic. The clinic advertises on its website that it does abortions for 27-plus weeks of pregnancy.
Meanwhile, they seem to be enforcing the federal law and the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, in a overly aggressive fashion against peaceful pro-lifers. For example,
the Compass Care CEO says that regardless of what he sees as an unequal application of justice, people are duty-bound to exercise their freedom of speech and freedom of religion or risk losing them. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And President Joe Biden is issuing an executive order on the immigration at the White House, marking the 12th anniversary of DACA. Let's take a look.
So who knows the possibility of a dream better than those who traveled miles just to find it? I've seen it over and over again in my community college students, immigrants and refugees, first-generation Americans who take nothing for granted. They show up, they don't complain, and they only ask for one thing in return: the chance to work hard and build a good life for themselves and for their families. That's the promise of America. That's the promise that drew Joe's and my ancestors to the United States, that we are a nation defined not by language or ethnicity, by race or religion, that America is and always has been defined by us, we the people. So today I want to tell you an American story. You came to this country over a decade ago to work, to study, to find a future. You made a plan, and then you fell in love. So you built a life, a home, one filled with big smiles on little faces, with laughter and skinned knees, with PTA meetings and soccer practice. You go to the school of your dreams and start a business and tutor kids in math after school. And all you want is to give your child all the possibility of the world. But hanging over you is a shadow, a missing piece of paper, the possibility that your family may not be able to stay together. It's a story that too many families all across the country live every day. Since Joe took office, we've heard from those mothers and daughters, those fathers and sons, about the agony of that shadow. So Joe is doing what he always does, leading the way with compassion and experience. Taking the action of our nation that our nation needs to thrive. Today, Joe is helping our country continue reaching for the dream of America. With our different backgrounds and beliefs, each of us makes our nation and remakes it in big ways and small ones. We are millions of individuals that add up to something so much bigger than any one of us. And that's what Joe is doing today for all of us, for the communities that are stronger because of the immigrants who call them home, for the thousands of families who have added their bright and beautiful threads to our American tapestry, for those mothers and husbands and dreamers who have waited so long, worked so hard, and given so much, for people like Javier, who was able to pursue his dream of being a nurse thanks to DACA. Who saves lives every day, whose family needs him, and who shouldn't have to live in fear. Please help me welcome Javier Quiroz Castro.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Javier Quiroz Castro. My resilient parents brought me to this country to give me a chance at a better future when I was just 3 years old. I am a dreamer. Growing up undocumented was not easy. Like thousands of other immigrants, my parents endured hard labor in order to provide for the family. They are a symbol of the American dream, and they helped me with my dream, which was higher education. Now I have a beautiful wife, Haley, and two magnificent children, all of whom are US citizens and who are counting on me. Thanks to the DACA program, by the way, created by then Vice President Biden, I was able to become a registered nurse. I have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. I now have the privilege to work for Houston Methodist, the largest, the #1 hospital system in all of Texas. Being a nurse has allowed me to give back to my community while supporting my family, especially during the pandemic. I helped take care of patients in our COVID-19 critical care unit. Saving American lives was only possible because of DACA. It allowed me to live and work and build a family in the only country I have ever known and loved. I stand before you today filled with hope and gratitude, because it is a privilege to personally thank President Biden for delivering on his promise to protect American families like mine. His actions today will prevent hundreds of thousands of families like mine across America from being torn apart, allowing us to continue to contribute to our communities and build a brighter, bigger future for our children. It is now my great honor to introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Javier, thank you. Please. Sit down. Today's a good day. first bill I introduced when I was president, an immigration bill that included this provision, but it never got off the ground. It needed a little more help. But now, today, a significant portion of it's being passed, or being by executive order. Javier, thank you for the introduction and for sharing your family story. You know, I've often said, doctors, we've been a significant consumer of health care in my family. Spent a lot of time in hospitals and for our family, anyway. And I always said that doctors let you live, nurses make you want to live. Not a joke. A lot of time in ICU, a lot of time with my son, a lot of time. And, you know, if there's any angels in heaven, they're all nurses, men and women, not a joke. So thank you for what you did help us get through the pandemic, pal, and for all you're doing for our country. My name's Joe Biden. I'm Jill Biden's husband. Thanks to all the members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure I'm going to introduce you all the way. But all kidding aside, Secretary Mayorkas, as well as Secretary Becerra, and advocates and families for law enforcement, faith leaders, everybody's is here. 2 weeks ago, I did what Republicans in Congress refused to do. I took action to secure our border. That included restricting unlawful crossings at our southern border, making decisions on asylum more quickly, and so much more. And so far, it's working. Since we implemented my order, encounters have dropped 25% at the border, and we're seeing the lowest number we've seen in a long time. But folks, it took this step after the bipartisan agreement one of the most conservative Republican senators had helped work through in over a 4 or 5 week period, the strongest bipartisan security agreement that's ever been seen. But we were about to move forward when Republicans walked away from the deal for the most pathetic and petty of reasons. Donald Trump got on the phone literally and started, and the press can confirm this, and calling senators saying, don't go ahead and do this. Don't support this legislation that had bipartisan support. And when you ask why, he said it would hurt him politically and help me instead. So much for Republicans caring about the border. I also know many people in this room also had concerns about the steps I'd taken. I heard and respected from many of you and many people behind me of the concerns you felt as president I had to take these actions. Every nation must secure its border. It's just that simple. And if Trump and the Republicans wouldn't do it, working with me, then I would do it on my own, and I did. At the time I took these steps to secure the border, I also said that I would move to fix problems that made our immigration system unfair, unjust, and provisions that simply made it no sense at all. Specifically, steps that will be good for dreamers, married couples, and for Americans. That's why we're here today. A few days ago, we marked the 12th anniversary of taking care of dreamers that President Obama and I put in place. There are a few of these immigration areas that have had most positive impact and gotten more support from the American people across the board. These young people known as dreamers, Hispanics, South Asians, and more, who came to America as children, only know America as their home, have been able to live and learn out of the shadows. So many of them have graduated from high school and college and are starting families on their own, building successful careers, serving our nation in uniform, and so much more. We're a much better and stronger nation because of dreamers like Javier, who just introduced me. So today I'm announcing new measures to clarify and speed up work visas to help people, including dreamers, who have graduated from U.S. colleges and universities, landed jobs in high-demand, high-skilled professions that we need to have grow to see our economy grow. It's the right thing to do.
And we'll have more on this in NTD's Capital Report at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. See you tomorrow.